Good afternoon, students. Are you hearing my voice? Right. In our last class, we completed the third unit of third paper, Dalit movements. Within the third unit, third module, we completed various anti-caste movements which emerged in colonial India. Among them, Adi Dravida movement. With the inspiration of Adi Dravida movement, self-respect movement has started, and Adi Hindu movement at United Provinces and Adi Hindu movement in Telugu speaking regions, Adi Karnataka movement, and many other movements we discuss. Okay, so after the third module of the third paper, now we are moving to the paper 2. Within the paper 2, we already completed the second and third modules, and the next module is the fourth. Okay, so within the fourth module of second paper, we have certain concepts regarding the colonialism. Before going to those concepts, like the stages of colonialism and impact of colonialism, the colonialism in Indian context, and the colonialism and its stages. So we see the definition, features of stages of colonialism. Okay, today we are going to see about the stages of colonialism, and before going to stages of colonialism, we'll see what are the things which comes under the colonialism. And next, we see the various stages which you find in the Indian context. Okay, so I will start my lecture on the stages of colonialism. Basically, the colonialism is a historical phenomenon as industrial capitalism. It describes the distinct stage in modern historical development of the colony that intervenes between the traditional economy and the modern capitalist economy. It is a well-structured whole, a distinct social formation in which the basic control of the economy and society in the hands of foreign capitalist class. The form of colonial structure varies with the changing conditions of the historical development of a capitalism as a worldwide system. Colonial economy was neither the pre-capitalist or capitalist. It was a colonial. That is a hybrid creation. Colonialism was disordered capitalism. Integration with the world economy did not bring capitalism to the colony. The colony did not develop in split image of the mother country. It was its opposite, non-developmental side. Colonialism did not develop social and productive forces. Rather, it underdeveloped them, leading to contradictions and a movement forward to the next stage, Colonialism is a social formation in which different modes of production coexist from feudalism to petty commodity production to agrarian, industrial, and financial capitalism. Unlike capitalism, where the surplus is appropriated on the basis of the ownership of the means of production, under the colonialism, surplus is appropriated by virtue of control over state power. When one understands colonialism as a social formation rather than as a mode of production, we are able to see the primary contradiction as a societal one rather than in a class terms. Thus, we have national liberation struggle rather than a class struggle against the colonial power. The primary contradiction in society is the national one, not the class one. Okay, so the struggle against the colonial power is a political. And then we see the basic features of colonialism. One of the basic feature of colonialism is that under it, the colony is integrated into the world capitalist system in which subordinate position. Colonialism is characterized by unequal exchange, the exploitative international division of labor means that the metropolis produced goods of high value with high technology and colonies produced goods of low value and productivity with low technology. The colony produced raw materials while the metropolis produced manufacturing goods. The pattern of railways development in India in the second half of 19th century was keeping with the interest of British industry. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, the Indian nationalist leader, described this a decorative another's wife. So the colony was articulated with the world market, but internally disarticulated. Its agricultural sector did not serve its industry, but the metropolitan economy and the world market. The drain of wealth took place through unrequited exports and the state expenditure on armed forces and civil services. Foreign political domination is the fourth feature of colonialism. Therefore, unequal exchange, external integration, and international disarticulation, a drain of wealth, and foreign political domination may be understood as the four main features of colonialism. Okay, so after features, we may see the various stages of the whole colonialism, the global concept, and we'll go to the colonialism in the Indian context. Okay, so first of all, see what are the various stages in the colonialism. You basically find three stages of colonialism, basically, and within the first stage, which is you may find monopoly of trade and plunder of various colonies by a imperialist country. Okay, so we'll see what are the things comes under the first stage of colonialism. The first stage had two basic objectives. In order to make trade more profitable, indigenously manufacturing goods were to be bought cheap. For this, competitors were to be kept out, whether local or European. So territorial conquest kept local traders out of the lucrative trade, while rival European companies were defeated in war. Thus, the characteristic of the first stage was monopoly of a trade. When you see the second point in this and the political, secondly, the political concept of colony enabled plunder and seizure of surplus. For example, the drain of wealth from India to Britain during the first stage was considerable, and it amounted to 2 to 3% of the national income of Britain at that time. Colonialism was superimposed on traditional systems of economy and polity. Okay, no basic changes were introduced in the first stage. When you see in the second stage, like the era of pre-trade, the interests of industrial bourgeoisie of metropolis in the colony was in the markets available for manufacturing goods. For this, it was necessary to increase the exports from the colony to pay for purchase of manufacturing imports. The metropolitan bourgeoisie also wanted to develop the colony as a producer of raw materials to lessen dependence on non-empire sources. Increase of exports from colony would also enable it to pay for the high salaries and profits of merchants. The industrial bourgeoisie opposed plunder as a form of appropriation of surplus on the ground that it would destroy the goose that laid the golden eggs. So trade was mechanism by which the social surplus was to be appropriated in this stage. In this stage, changes in the economy, polity, administration, social, cultural, and ideological structure were initiated to enable exploitation in the new way. The slogan was developed. The slogan was development and modernization. The colony was to be integrated with the world capitalist economy and the mother country. Um, uh, uh, and the uh, uh, was the mother country, and mother country, and the capitalists were allowed to develop plantations, trade, transport, mining, and industries. The system of transport and communication was developed to facilitate the movement of massive quantities of raw materials to be to the ports for export. Liberal imperialism was new political ideology. The rhetoric of the rulers was to train the people in the self-government. When you see in the third stage, which may be era of financial capital, the third stage saw intensive struggle for markets and sources of raw materials and food grains. Large scale accumulation of capital in the metropolis necessitated search for avenues for investment abroad. These interests were best served where the imperial powers had colonies. This led to more intensive control over the colony in order to protect the interests of imperial power. In the sphere of ideology, the mood was one of reaction. The need for intensive control increased. There was no more talk of self-government. Instead, benevolent despotism was the new ideology according to which the colonial people were seen as a children who would need guardians forever. A major contradiction in this stage was that the colony was not able to absorb metropolitan capital or increase its exports of raw materials because of over exploitation in the earlier stages. A strategy of limited modernization was implemented to take care of this problem, but the logic of colonialism would not be subverted. Underdevelopment became a constraint on further exploitation of the colony. The start stage often did not take off. Colonialism had so wrecked the economies of some colonies that they could hardly absorb any capital investment. In many colonies, the older forms of exploitation continued. In India, for example, the earlier two forms continued even in the third stage also. Okay, so when you observe in the colonialism in the Indian context, India has generally been considered a classic colony. A study of colonialism in India can tell us a great deal about the functioning of colonialism in general. Let us see how the different stages of colonialism operated in India. When you see in the first stage of colonialism in India, in the first stage, both the objectives, the monopoly of trade and appropriation of government revenues were rapidly fulfilled with the conquest of first Bengal and parts of South India and then the rest of India. The East India Company now used its political power to acquire monopolistic control over Indian trade and handicrafts. Indian traders were ruined while viewers were forced to sell cheap. The company's monopoly ruined the viewers. In the next stage, the cheap manufactured goods finished them. The drain of wealth was admitted to by British officials. In the words of Deputy Chairman of the Court of Directors, um, our system acts very much like a sponge, drying up all the good things from the banks of Ganges. and squeezing them down on the banks of Thames. So the colony did not undergo any fundamental changes in this stage. Changes were made only in military organization and technology and at the top level of revenue administration. Land revenue could be extracted from the villages without disturbing the existing systems. In the sphere of ideology, too, there was a respect for traditional systems in contrast to denunciation of traditional values in the second stage. The respect to with which Sanskrit was held by British Indologists like William Jones was in sharp contrast to Macaulay's later dismissal of traditional learning as not being enough to fill a bookshelf of a good Westerner library. When you see in the second stage of Indian context, the era of free trade saw in India emerge as a market for manufacturing goods and a supply of raw materials and food grains. Import of Manchester cloth increased in the value from 96 lakh sterling in 1860 to 27 crore sterling in 1900. Traditional weavers were ruined by this competition. Rather than industrialization, decline of industry or deindustrialization took place. In the Middle Gangetic region, according to historian A.K. Bagsi, the weight of industry in the livelihood pattern of people was reduced by half from 1809 13 to the census year 1901. Estimates by Shiva Subramaniam indicate that in the last half century of the British rule, the per capita income in India remained almost stagnant. Dadabhai Naoroji calculated per capita income at rupees 20 per annum. Railway expansion was undertaken and the modern post and telegraph system was set up. Administration was made more detailed and comprehensive so that imports could penetrate the villages and raw materials could be taken out easily. Capitalist commercial relations were to be enforced. The legal system was to be improved so as to ensure upholding the sanctity of contract. Modern education was introduced to produce babus to man the new administration. Westernized habits were expected to increase the demand for British goods. Transformation of the new existing culture and social organization required that the existing culture be denounced. Orientalism, by depriving people of the power to study their own languages, was an appropriation of the processes by which people understand themselves. The new ideology was one of the development. Underdevelopment was not the desired, but the inevitable consequence of the inexorable working colonialism to of trade and its inner contradictions. When you see the third stage of colonialism in Indian context, the third stage is rightly known as the era of financial capital, as a huge amount of capital was invested in railways, loans to government of India, trade, and to a lesser extent in plantations, coal mining, jute mills, shipping, and banking in India. In this stage, Britain's position in the world was constantly challenged by rivalry of a new imperialist countries, so that the result was further consolidation of its control over India. Control had to be strengthened to contend with the competition from the rival imperialist powers. Okay, so students, these are the things about the colonialism and the stages of colonialism in the general context and in the Indian context. Okay, so students, this is end of my class today, and I will be meet you in the next class with the next concept. Okay, so thank you one and all, and now I am going to end my class now. Okay, so thank you very much.